Okay, now you can go. Can you hear?
Can you hear me?
Mic on there.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Hello? Can you hear me?
Oh, contact, Chenzum.
Oh, okay. Okay. Good morning and good evening to every respective individual presented today in this session. And thank you everyone for being here this evening. Me, Sring Chenzum, as a host of today's session. I request everyone to mute your speaker in case you forgot to. So today we are pleased to welcome Mr Phurwa Dhondup, a very special guest from Dolpopa, Dho Tarap. It's my honor to briefly introduce him, though I'm sure many of you here are already known to this. He is currently a PhD student specializing in human geography, which is also known as a Mr Circumrigpa intervention, and from University of Colorado Boulder, USA. And he has an MA from in Peace, Conflict and Development Studies from Tribhuvan University of Nepal, and with an exchange of semester at the University of Ruhuna, Sri Lanka, and as well as he has second MA degree in geography from the University of Colorado, USA. So basically, he is an alumnus of Crystal Mountain School, and during his course of learning, he managed to return back to village and work over 4.5 years. And so he has a lot of significant professional experiences. Work as first as a teacher, later as a president and project coordinators of Action Dolpo or Vision Dolpo, a non-governmental organization. And his research interests mainly. Oh, hello, I request you to mute the mic. Huh? I request everyone to mute your speaker, please. So his research interest mainly includes on the topic of conservation, environmental governance, and Yatsagumbu infrastructure development in Nepal Himalayas, and on which he has worked on written various academic works and published and visual essays, including in the records, Grand Views, and Himalayan Journal, and with Kathmandu Post. So today he will be sharing with us his expert opinions on the brief history and current state of education in Dolpo. So I ask everyone to give your full attention to Mr. Phurwa Dhondup, and I'm sure there is a lot to take from. And this is also to inform. At the end of this session, you will have some time to ask questions, and please feel free to ask the question. And this is also to notify this meeting is, though the meeting is scheduled for 1 hour, but due to the app is being freely used, it will be closed or it will end automatically after 40 minutes. And please, I request everyone to reconnect to the previous link and join us for the further continuation in the second round. So with that, I ask and help me in welcoming Master Phurwa Dhondup, and thank you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Katinche, Chenzum, thank you so much for having me here.
Pirate is like 20,000 में बेची रहेछ.
Hello, mute your speaker, please.
चाहिँ किन्दैन.
So, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yeah.
you.
So, if you guys hear me, I would request you guys to mute your mic again so that it doesn't disturb everyone. And then I'll start in a bit. Anyway, I'd like to again thank the organizers, especially Dhondup Thorshe, right? And then also Karma Chuldim and Nima Dhondup and others in Dolpopa For Dolpo for having me here. And again, Chunzom did a big introduction of me, but I would like to come here just to share some of the things that I have learned while I was doing some little research on the history of education. So in that capacity, I'll be speaking not necessarily as an expert, right? But as someone who is trying to learn and who is still learning about the issue of education. All right. All right. I am requesting again to mute yourself if you have not yet. I'm not sure who has not muted now. Anyway, I have a few notes before I go to the talk. First, I want to let you know that this is not an exhaustive or a complete account of the history and current state of education, right? But still very much a work in progress, which means that I'm actually working on it now. And this, the materials that I'm going to present here actually comes from a book chapter that I'm writing with Dr. Ken Bao. So I'm presenting some of the materials here, and I hope those will be helpful to some of you. Second, when I say the word or term Dolpo, I'm using it to refer to the geographical area, right? That has been traditionally defined as Dolchok Truhi, Soperang Chukchik. So that's the region I'm talking about. I'm not necessarily talking about Dolpa district, which is a much larger administrative district that came much later, actually in 1975. And third, again, I want to say upfront that the condition and the status of education in Dolpo is extremely uneven, which means that it's different in different villages. And depending on where in Dolpo you're talking about, the status and the condition of education is quite different. That being said, I'm trying to present a broader, bigger picture of how education has been, right? So broader, bigger picture, quite sort of a historical, not very ancient historical, but more recent since the 1960s. And how that has been. So I'm trying to give a broader general picture, and which means that it may not be true for a specific village or specific school. In other words, what I'm trying to tell is a general story of education rather than a specific story of a school or village. All right. So I want to share a screen, but I'm not allowed to. Who's the host? Can you make me co-host so I can share the screen? Nima. Nima, can you make me co-host so I can share the screen?
Yes. I'll call you.
Excuse me, Kela. Kela.
Oi.
How can we make you as a co-host?
So go to my picture and on the right, top near the mute, just click there, and
Yeah, I got you. I got you.
yeah, and there should be an option to make co-host.
No, it's not given here.
Oh, really?
It's like stop video, chat, rename, pin video, spotlight. Yeah, okay, make host. I got it.
Yeah. So you just do that.
Thank you. Do we have you?
All right, great. Yeah, it works. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So again, you all know the title of the talk today, which is a brief history and the current state of education. And this is a picture of what is called the first class in Dolpo. And this actually comes from September 16, 1963 from Dho Tarap. And the picture was taken by a French ethnologist who was there to conduct research in 1963. His name is Cornel Jest, and he was present in Dho Tarap when there were lots of officials from the government who came and started the first school. And that's sort of the first ever modern school in Dolpo.
Content.
All right, this is what I have for today. I have divided it into 4 parts, right? And then the first 2 half are gonna be a lot about history of education today, from 1960s specifically, but also a little bit before 1960s, and from 1975 to 1990s and so on. And then I'll talk a little bit about the state of education today. What is the condition like? What sort of actors are involved in education in Dolpo? And then I'll talk about breaking into higher education, because that seems to be quite a major problem in the context of education in Dolpo, right? Lots of people are not able to make it to higher education. And majority of students who finish +2 just end up there. And that's a major issue that I see in education today. And then I'll end with a few words to Dolpopas aspiring to study abroad, right? And I'll share some of my experiences briefly, my sort of journey to navigate the very difficult aspects of, going further and then getting higher education. It's not an easy task, and it's a challenge for all of us. And I'll try to share my own experiences. And then if anyone is interested or aspire to study abroad at some point now or in the future, I'll talk about a few things that could help you, to prepare from now. And then we'll do the question and answer at the end. All right, so this is the part on the history of education. I've divided it into 4 time zones. So I'm trying to present the history in a more timeline so that it's easier for everyone to follow. I divided into 4 sections, right? What was education like before 1960s? What happened in 1960s and what happened in 1975? And then what has been going on today is very much a product of what has been happening since mid-1990s, when lots of NGOs started to come and dramatically transform the landscape of education in Dolpo. All right, so in the period before 1960s, education in Dolpo was mostly done through household lineages and monastic institutions, right? So the education before 1960s was primarily or mostly religious in nature. And the household and monastic modes of education before 1960s and even today is strongly associated with or rooted in what is called the liturgical and literary tradition of Tibetan Buddhism and Zen. Right, so these are very much to do with religious education. And one thing, a key thing to remember in terms of how the condition of education has been pre-1960s is to think about migration. And I say migration because migration of Dolpopas out of Dolpo, as well as migration of outsiders into Dolpo, have largely shaped the geography of education pre-1960s, but also continue to do so today. And when I say migration, I'm talking about two specific kinds of migration, right? And migration of Dolpopas out of Dolpo to get higher education and training in different regions outside Dolpo, as well as migration of outsiders into Dolpo. So let me talk about migration of people from outside Dolpo into Dolpo and how they actually shaped education in the region. So we all know that Dolpo is a Bayul, right? And there's a story, legend of Dolpo as a Bayul, one of the Bayul. And so if you go into the Himalayas, there are many settlements and villages, and all of them have some story related to Bayul. And it's called Bayul, sorry about that. All right, and it's called Bayul because it's a hidden place, right? It's hidden from the oppressive powers of the central government and very oppressive monastic institutions, mostly in central Tibet, but also later in different parts of Ngari. And because in those regions, mostly in central Tibet, but also parts of Ngari, there were very strong central power and control by kings as well as by different monasteries, and that they would collect a lot of tax from ordinary people and lamas. And because of that, people were actually escaping those places and trying to come into places that do not have that sort of strong central control. And Dolpo is one of the many places in the Himalayas where these ordinary people and lamas who are escaping those state oppression were coming, right? And so some of these, there are many examples of lamas coming into Dolpo. And in fact, one of the scholar, Amy Heller, has suggested that some of the villages in Dolpo, if you look at their founding, like when they were founded and by whom, you can almost trace them back to the migration of few lamas from different parts of Tibet, right? And that's not true for every village, but then there are many villages. And if you look at the local history, you see that the founding is related to the migration. And the best examples I could think of some of these lamas who migrated into Dolpo, of course, is Tribhuvan University, right, who came to here area, as well as in Tarap, and they not only came to Dolpo, but also went on to build monasteries, right? Here and in the case of Tarap, it was Mekim monasteries, and they also opened pilgrimage routes, right? Nekochewa. So in the case of Tribhuvan, he opened the pilgrimage route of here to Dukta, whereas for Gotolning Kyabo, it is he was a key major figure in opening and making Buddha as a pilgrimage. And these lamas were also providing spiritual teachings to Dolpopas. Right, and these are just two examples. There are many lamas, known and unknown, and they were, giving lots of spiritual teachings, both to lay and religious people. And so, why? Again, I talked a little bit about why and when these sort of people migrated into Dolpo. So the earliest account is that lots of lamas and ordinary people migrated into Dolpo from central Tibet. Utsang, between 7th and 9th centuries. That is when the Yarlung Empire, right, the Tibetan Empire was extremely strong and it was very powerful. So in many ways, it was like a modern state, which was in some way helpful, but at the same time quite oppressive to general population because they have to pay a lot of tax. and many people did not have the means to pay tax, so they want to escape, right? But then again, although there's not much evidence that lots of lamas migrated between 7th and 9th centuries. But then there's another account again by the scholar Emmy Heller, who talked about this sort of a major wave of migration into Dolpo around the 12th centuries, which coincides with the second wave of Buddhism in Tibet, right? Tebachita, after Silputorwa, right? There was this period in Pe for a few hundred years when there was no control, there was no governance, and then there were small princely states. And then there was this second wave of Buddhism, and there were small monasteries which were trying to control their small territory, right? And they were starting to collect tax from the people and so on. So many people are actually escaping those small local monasteries. And there was a lot of struggles between different monasteries and so on. And that's another second account of the migration into Dolpo. And of course, the most recent major wave of migration is after 1960s, when hundreds of Tibetans were escaping China, right? When there was a lot of wars and events happening up north, they were coming into Nepal and further to India, and they were passing through Dolpo and other Himalayan regions. And some of them settled and contributed to the field of education, also Amchi and other forms of knowledge in the region. So anyway, this is a way to just give an idea about how education in Dolpo was actually shaped by people migrating into Dolpo, right? Not just necessarily the Dolpopas. The second kind of migration is, and this is more important in many ways, is migration of Dolpopas from Dolpo to different regions outside to obtain education, right? And the most famous example, of course, is the life and the journey of Dolpopa Hirap Gyaltsen, who's a 13th century Hyantong master, right, who studied in Tsang region of Tibet. Similarly, there were lots of lamas as well who went to study in Tsang region, and they were there learning. So they were going to Tsang region to study, right? And if you guys have seen a book called Four Lamas of Dolpo, which is written by one of the first Western scholar in Dolpo, who wrote the book Four Lamas of Dolpo. So all the four lamas, including, as well as lots of many lamas who went to study abroad in Tsang region. And I really appreciate Ngawang Dhondup, who's here, I think, for helping me with a lot of this information. Now, Ngawang also shared with me an interesting information which I thought was really helpful to show that the extent to which Dolpopas migrated and studied in Tibet. For example, Ngawang was telling me that so lots of Dolpopas studied in Tsang region, right? Especially in Sakya sort of monasteries. And one of the major monasteries where many of these Dolpopas ended up studying was Tsang Tanak Thupten Namgyaling monastery, for example, right? And Ngawang was telling me that if you go to the monastery today, you can still find a small small house called Dolpo Kangsen. It's a Dolpo house, right? And of course, if you look into how monasteries are organized in Tibet, you see that each of the monasteries are organized in a way that there is a regional Kangsen, right? The regional residence, and so they just like there could be a house for Amdo Kam and so on. There also was one for Dolpo and Lo and so on. So this is to say that Dolpopas, it was a major trend that many Dolpopas who going abroad mostly in Chang region, as well as in other parts of Tibet, to obtain religious education and higher training before the 1960s for a long time. And then I am including monastic education as a part of education in Dolpo because I think that's very important. That's still a major part of education there, right? And of course, we should not separate between monastic and modern education as such. And we all know, right, that the ultimate goal of religious education might be to obtain enlightenment, but in practice, right, they help people to what we would call reproduce their social and material lives. In other words, even getting a monastic training helps you make a living if you go back home, right? And that's true for a majority of people who do that. So early 1960s, that was when the first government school was established, right? And I know about this because Cornelius, who took the photo that you saw, shared with me his journal or his diary from the day that the school was established. And so again, early 1960s, Nepal's government system was the panchayat, right? And then this was actually the first initiative by the government to establish a school in Dolpo. And Dolpo was part of, and Dolpo was actually part of not Dolpa district. Dolpa district did not exist at the time. It was actually part of Baklung Anchal, right? And then there was the head of the Anchal is called Anchalati. Basically, Corny just recorded the events leading up to the inauguration or the Udghatan of the first school in Dho Tarap, right, on 16 September 1963. And he said that the school was named National Primary School of Dho Tarap. And there was just one teacher and 20 boys and girls. And it was started on the courtyard of a Thakali woman called of a Thakali woman who was living in Dho Tarap at the time. So there was no building, no classroom. It was just started in a small court, right, with just one teacher and 20 boys and girls. And as you can see, the picture comes from that day. They started school there, but also they took several young boys with them back to Baklung to educate, right, to give them education in the Nepali system. And Baklung, because at that time Baklung was the headquarters of the zone to which Dolpo belonged and paid tax to. Many of these people, right, that some of them we know, completed grade 5, 6, 7. Some, I think only one person completed 10th. Some of them returned back home and they serve as members of the Gaon Panchayat, right? There was this, in the village at the time, there was no Gabisa at the time. It was before that. And they served as local leaders in Dolpo. And some became Porten and so on, Pradhan in their respective villages. Now, again, if we ask what was the key objective of the first government school in Dolpo, actually Cornelius, who's the scholar, gives a very good idea. He said that Banta Bahadur Thapa, who is the Anjalati or the government official who was there, he gave a speech to all the people when they inaugurated the school. And he said that the school was established so the inhabitants, locals, could speak and read Nepali, the national language. So it's quite clear that the primary objective of the first government school was to assimilate Dolpo into the mainstream Nepali society and culture by teaching them Nepali language. So that was the primary objective of the first government school, right? Whereas pre-1960s, it was religious in nature. And the objective of the government was to actually teach Dolpopa's Nepali language so they can be part of the Nepali state. However, the first government school was poorly organized and run. Basically, there was no classroom, no building, nothing, right? And it lasted for a very short time, and ultimately it died. It just stopped. It didn't function, right? And it ended, before, right after it started. And so that's the story of the first school. After 10 years, in 1975, there was this second. Again, in 1975, we're still in the panchayat government system. There was a second initiative, this time by King Birendra, to establish series of schools in Dolpo. And in 1975, King Birendra had just become the new king of Nepal, right? He was just coronated. And if you have talked to elders in your village, you might have heard that King Birendra actually came to several villages in Dolpo. I remember that he came to Dho Tarap, right, in a winter, in a helicopter. So basically, it appears that it was in 1975, but I'm not sure about the date. But King Birendra traveled to different parts of the country, including in several villages in Dolpo. And he visited the people, he just looked around and so on. And then at the end of the year, or in 1975, which is 2032, Bikram Sambat, King Birendra established a series of schools in Dolpo, right, in different gowns, to make education, primary education or education up to grade 5, free and available to every child. Again, this was the time in 1975, the districts were created for the first time. So Dolpa district was created in 1975 as a part of King Birendra's reform to develop, different parts of the region. In 1975, the Gaon Panchayat was still there, but the village development committees were not there yet. They would soon be, replaced by the VDCs of Gabisa. So in so many ways, like if you go to the district education office in Denai today, if you look at the list of the schools, and if you look at their names, all of these names are very Nepali, by the way. That doesn't reflect the linguistic and cultural aspect of Dolpo, right? And these schools, most of these schools, the date of establishment is 1975 or 2032 becomes Sambat. And that's when they were officially established, right? And it's possible that it might have been run for some time. Now, if you talk to some of the people, elders who have been to this school, then you see that the students were actually older than the teachers, and in some cases the students would beat up the teachers and so on. But basically, the schools were not effective, right? And that's when the culture of government schools never or rarely showing up, right? Government teachers who were appointed in a specific village did not go there or teach there, or if they went, they stayed for a week or 2 weeks, right? And that's when that culture seemed to have started. And again, all of these government teachers are not Dolpopas, so therefore they are coming from quite far away places, and they did not want to stay there. And the problem is that it was not just lack of this government teacher or this government teachers not staying regularly in Dolpo, but also because there was no physical infrastructures, right? In some villages, they were very poorly built, very badly maintained buildings, but in many other villages, there was not even any building. So the school was in many ways non-existent. So again, I want to repeat that the objective of education in 1975 as a part of this Birendra's initiative, again, was to integrate Dolpo into the Nepali state, right, by teaching Nepali language. But this time, he was talking about this new policy of making primary education available and free to all the children of Nepal. Again, if you look from the perspective of Dolpo, if you talk from the perspective of Dolpo, that has largely been unsuccessful. And we know that there's this culture of wait.
Sorry for the interruption. So this is to notify within 1 minute the meeting will end automatically. So I request everyone to reconnect to the previous link. So within 1 minute, meeting will end.
All right. Maybe we can just do it now and then.
Okay. So we will end now and reconnect to the next round.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
아주 고소한 게 있다.
큐디 코호스로 지대. 양 티키초다. 강 그대.
Hello, 제가 됐을래지라. Hello.
오, 됐을래.
제가 중반에 벽에 들을 시도는 야보도 쉬는데나 저들 구셔 먹고 싶은 중반에
야야 대충면도 나 벽에 통해도. 당아 특히
현성. 리코드 제와 주. 어좀 오케이.
오케이.
야, 땡큐.
야야, 다 직전에 되시다. 당봉하대 다 그저 망보시면도 야, 강도도 벽에도는 휴대네 디와 지는데 벽에도 전에 라라문도.
라스.
야야, 다 티기가데 양공 인치 미공은 요저슨 셈네 만에서 야야. 다 양아디 이마트도 코호스로시대. nga par campo de yecho que gol Hello, Nima.
Cerco irmi dove? Tanga to zo mare.
Killa, you may start now.
Okay. 다 하고 줘. 야, 통기가 screen.
Yes, we can see now.
Oh yeah.
미도도
미도가.
Yeah,
야야. 당아 강도도 돌보게도 쉬어. 다들 인지게 고미중은 등데 고나바 카시쇼다 디체데. 당아디 단다파도 1960s 이건 안텔레 지동 국제 특주 네 뒤주 대가가 같이 휴차이 다 나디 직동 국제 특주 다 롭총기 도당치고 디콜데도 뛰슈에 다 빅설도 직동 국제 국주 나데 NGOs 다 미설도 지켜 남밖에 소파 망치식 돌보나데 데데 롭차즈여로 소파데 멘칸즈여로 소파데 디키 다가 망보시체 데디나도 딩간데 다 흉기 롭차식 로 1975 내송 흉기 롭차다 휴구나데 망보시여데 이나 디 롭차디 지당 율데 달프니 롭차디 고츠 롭총 스믹셀 진다 축마도데 디체데 NGO 망보식다 1994 내송 다 당부디 액션 돌고 따라플레 프렌치 NGO should then you are taprisa then dinner such a mangoshi the NGO damash that then look on the Gurwa Mangostan the decor the tushi here tadi mixel the NGO ki ta lopchong tetang lopcha ki gopa that model of start ni ki ni the migul de 대상기 롭총 제기 냠도 되네 제당양 수수기 취어던 리흉 양 롭정지야. 디샤데 다 거기 롭천남 분이 그게 진짜기 롭데 따로 분이 다 네팔 흉기 롭정에 제거체 다 믹스드 네팔기 게 정거 이네 인지게 정거죠. 니 아틱 디강도 되네 네팔 흉 다디 탐제 네팔 흉기 롭다. 흉구나 다 분이 이나 the NGO 망치기 네팔 흉기 curriculum 안낭다 디시고핀 지금도 디샤데 다 비익 랍고체 니도 다 돌보기 다 추어다나다 다 로규된 디콜라 테스트 좀 지고도 다 디나힌 암치디 멘디콜라 테스트 좀 지고도 네데 NGO 망치기도 당디를 쓰시도 다 NGO 공기 다 롭자 고축단디 다 인지 돌리 유닛 파트너십 네도 다디 나가숨도 다 지케기 진다만 양 다디 NGO 망치치게 유럽 등의 아리도 당하기 파츠데스테 리스트서요. 다다 비니 당아 리스트 춘춘서요. 다디 당보디 롭자기 밍 데니와 달롭자가나 사샤 롭자고 주 로 단디 롭자를 런칭 NGO 담이다. 거기 거래. 다다 비니 단다 파르타르니 롭자 정아도 돌보래. 롭자 정아 나네 펼칠 NGO 니슈사 기로남 제다도 다 당보 1994 네 고츠 다탄다 2014 니동 춥히 받고 다 롭자 고츠도 주힘 받고 거기 지탄기 레카 지탄디 지케기 진다스팅 로봇체 디칸레 지탄 local right unique chopachi cap tapena the crystal mountain lobter in action topo that french ke chopachi the kind vision topo local chopa balnang the picture ke chopa nyamdo ropache this sum the hyungnyamdo right the partnership that sumgi partnership hyungche 네 지게기 로람 지긴 초바체 안데 숨도 유미기 초바 숨기 돈에 롭다 주단 이거 도당들 쓰시도 데 디켄기 다디 NGO 망치기 규정보 파트 롭다들 로람 제투바 답이나 가히기 로 니슈쟁아 하기기 로 니슈 하기기 로 잡게 디라제도 다 페달근다 디낭네자다 내가 망보도 끝나다 Dho Tarap thing the picture ki dotang chikwa de pushto ta chikeki chapkur full ra chango tamja te yureng bo chepache ta ni to ta phaje tinggu ting the foxundo dawd se da ta meeting the yulki chopa ki capture shombo che ta dikang chikeki ro pa ta partnership data ziki thona to tang shido de hen sacha ka hele yandi chopa ki capture capture 춘춘자마도 capture 첨부시 제마도 비겐기 달럽다 참참데 다와숨 주 다 참참 다와히 참참 다와가 참참 로힝아 거란도 주 마도 비기 내지만 보시도
따라 메저이어 스타메시
다 단다기 다 롭종 돌보데 롭종 기콜데 달프니 다마 안츠데 담보다 롭종 롭타기 코르레 다 레카 칭인기 초과되나 미나다지 수수도 고텔레 다 거시 결심보다지 담기 다 디기능의 휴바나긴 지도 직동 국제 주주로 숨네 숨 흉기 다 라파다지 시티 롭다지요 니와데 NGOs 다 NGO 망치 디기능 나히 지게야데 이나다 하히 네팔팅 다 디자이어 다 디니자 다 숨바디 망치 흉딩 NGO 제 somebody that chamadi loptachi korde roram chicken and the so indo na di here to esmindo ta hyungi kacha here to pene ngamane that 1963 right chito chitong kupja tushurozum de hyungi loptadi pelche nima khahe ma to chotomindo dichade hyungi pelche lopchong lopta 주야데 로람 첨부시 지마도 다 직동 국가 투주로 좀네 나다 직동 국가 tunju 대응을 해나자 근데 다다 Dho Tarap na hyungki lopta ki nata mangchi pekyo Dishade hyungki thone ta roram dewe tisene ina roram di tsaksu bushikinde hyukshin bushikinde Anyido ta NGO ting di chopaki program de darpini ta ngaki samjar de NGO ting chopaki pelche dolpo ki lopchong de tanda pato gyurba tong ki ta soboshi NGO ki chetera ta himbagi pelche chet hato bi ta NGO dawini kongi leka chetang che shikdu ta tengsangi lopchong ting le ta kerik de hyung ka tundel ki tone lopchong te nitu chitang yulki choba tang nyamdo dewa che de gyun jingbo program che de ta chitang NGO mangbo shi ta yakap dona da ta jamning ka saje kawo dona ta NGO mangbo de tang ta di NGO henda minda ki leka chitang khaga chi duk ting ta dobo de zein ta sumbaru darupini ta chido Nitong chuptin nesung tadi hyungsamba lepe chele gangpalika lepe chele ta yang di lopchating lopchong ki korki genting le oncha mangchi ta di gangpalika lete dichete ta gangpalika ki program ta ngen la mangchi chehimba da zistongi ta ina ta ngaki samchade NGO ta chikyaki roram da seshini ta gyunjingbo tentoyagi tadi tendency met ta tanda parto lo chu ni hyu chenga ni chenga da ze NGO ki deka che na ta chema lo chu ni hyu ni chenga na de te yodi me ha ko man ta kong ne de NGO tanda leka che ta kong tapena jamding na de tajur ki kangal pechem bu chapani de shikshani kong ki roram chemisi pa de ekasi NGO ki roram kongchume den dina hyungki tanda roram tangone kongchume de ta dingi tokto ta dolpo ki lopta ki dotang de kandi na kol da tanga ngaya ta tanda di kol samnish tang na sawo hyos mi do ta ngai ki samjo da local government gangpaliga jiwangji yaku kira ani di la gyurwa tangtuna yaku ro tingi ina ta tanda parta pini yang gangpaliga ki dosong shitang popchong la mangchi ta chi tungen soe pena kangbashi soe ro yana the desk bench tang the infrastructure injika hyuni teacher do mangchi shi dosong tong ina ta lopta ki keken 나서 봤다. 흉기 개견이야 용도 미용도 같이 들었으면 말이다. 디차테 따단다기 흉사와기 뭐네 달피나 다 내값수 달줄기 등기도로나 망보시드나 디 로람기 도송동난이 망치 디 치등견 소야도 마도 현법적이 administration 당들의 리콜데 로람기다 시 마도 비등기 어디 디징에나 기타 NGO 망보시기 단다파트 도포데 로라 망보시도 데 큰기 롭타기 모델 라타 도포데 롭타시츠 어디 데 니도 되네 하이어 톨롭기 치에도 바이올데 호스텔도 망보시기 강보 망보기 데데는 톨롭데 동아기 그 로소시도 다 NGO 망치기 디더스 탐제기 다 단다파트 치면 이나다 망치기디 저당데 소브데도 도포는 진짜 망치 진짜 나와 죽고 봤더마도 롭좀 재미도 받지 가르는 군가 장모체다 디단 때 흉기 그게 용미도 때 튕기 먼저 비견기 롭자 망치 다와 히 다왕아 다와 죽 다와 튼 고자 된디네 진짜 톨롭시 톰보 파트 롭하도 비견기 진짜 죽밖에 전에 로트 망치시 용부케다 대본 유리샤 보이는 데 롭자 톨롭데 땅에 기도 소시도 해 다이나 망치 디 바이올로 옆에 호스텔 thing the roram chicken 진짜 망치기 롭총의 capture 진짜 죽반에서 진짜 준이 받았지 진짜 준이 제대로 roram chicken 같이 초밥 로람 chicken 들어왔다 딱 같이 롭다 같이 기다던다 ta gyurwada sitin ina ta roram cheko tuksin ina lopta mangcheki tanda roram di jinda chunyi part mato chemato adine cheme pe kengi tanda partu Dolpopa mangcheshi jinda chunyi tentubna dine third the higher education MA bachelor MA BA so tanda drum hatu be kangal chine tom dishate higher education tholop di Dolpoki called the sam tanda Dolpoki called the lopchonji called the samutami primary thing the secondary education high school right jinda nursery na jinda chuni partu gyumen tanda lopta yul mangche ta kangal de ina ta ngatiki never na hin ta yul rele lopta geto tan khaga ta yul khahye de lopta be tsaksu ko yana khahye de be kangal chete ba tanda ya ta hina ta best chirdar pini Dolpo sacha mangche shi jinda nursery na jinda chuni partu ta kangal mixer thongmen ta dungba himba ting dorde dan and this the kangal de ta khantonginen jinda chuni gi chet da lopchu mangche jinda chuni thon ta jinda che kipo che pa Dolpo de lopchong tree lopchong che yang bayul da lopchong che and dina jinda chuni partu jinda ki ro ram Dolpo ki lopchu mangche shi ta lopta yuko ba yamana ta Dolpo logro ta lekarana keken da che keken marani da health ta damina shi lekarane lekache lekamaran ta ngamaki rotana hin chikowe ki dita zishi judo dichate tanga janga me ina pelcher mi chune mi ke de zida chuni ne ya de tolop chigyo samar ta ngaki the Mr ki hue ko ta dina tanda partu Dolpona le lopchong da hyungki na da yumi sopa ki na da tene chike ki sopa na da tanda partu lopchong 진짜 당분에 chuni partu pe roram din kyapkyur ki tone lopchong da chir samtani tsaksu kosh tongi yena 진짜 chuni ki chede tolop ki lopchong de pe kale kamu shate dichate ta pena ngarang ki samjer ki kone ngarang ki nyamnyong ki kone hiane ta nga dawe ne ta 진짜 chuni partu lopchong che action Dolpo ki roram che dine 진짜 chuni partu lopchong che ta 진짜 chuni ne chindayum ta chindamene ta lopchong gane shigo ta dichate pe kangal che ta dikole tortu she 다 진짜 중이 버터 다 진다당 법중 saksu고 시. 다 진짜 중이 체다. 당 나로네 변나 진짜 중이 템베 로데 퍼처 2000 니동 개나 고는 시. 다 이유는 뭐래. 되다 Dolpoki 이따 현재 망보시 진짜 중이 템은 망보시 뭐 되다 미 퍼처 중이요 숨주시. 어때까보다 진짜 중이 템도 다 dine topchong higher education MA BA PhD diki samdo kono kormas tadi ki ta kekenda zena dudam chingin rodam chingin ki keken mixer chik ta kekenda yore ina keken konsulen kita hakomendo ta zinda chuni cheda topchong condition kande yapo ichi kade kaposhtu ta ngarang ki samjer la lopchong cheda naga mangpodo ngaki ropa mangcheshi chikya lopchong cheda himba the MBBS yamana heba diso engineering ngaki de zida chuni da science and the field shine ade kapda ta dosa henmendo ta mi heba robal da ne kahi chikya ro kahi science kahi MBBS that's it ani ngarang ki samjer da ta hitu de kako jumen da de lapso kyang hita yoma de kapda ta ngarang ki samjer da pelche ta dine zida chuni ne pa lop chu che ko ina peljur 그야 보시거든. 현바 아큐로 좀 제투 말하기 말하기 삼제디로 시텐주. 대디네 샘추차 로 판네다가 다롭 좀 제다다 제투 제다 디네 파 롭 좀 제투 좀 말해. 센다가 나기디 삼도 당당데 디다지 시코르. 다이네 파 Dolpo 조 되네 팔레 lokaheshi kekenting de dine lopta tarap lopta ki Tarap lopta leka che ki kokap kaung shrak then dikap su ngarang ki samlo pe mambu shtai ki kokap shrak su ada dikap na that is science the tamit samo science tong this Q science science that science model kimba lopchong me bana hin ki ke do sto ta dila nga mambu shi dumba da leka che ani minyandu ta dumba ki musul ki kangal mambu shi thong ne that science the chipo culture po mare kya ta lopchong himba yang culture po je ani mixer do ngarang social science ra chisok pa dila pe tonang chimbo chung andine nga ngarang ki de payule Tribhuvan University nang do 진짜 bachelor shi ngai tsai dina tanga ta bachelor sana chi ko tigim do bachelor sana nga misal chi tanga loptu do shi na tanga rangi lopchon chi ki de pa de tung sim do de chena nga ta tung tholop shi ma chena tanga chi ki bo do yon sama da semba de sama de chena nga ya ta master chi go MA chi go do ne yang ai ki de Tribhuvan University nang da yang MA go chui ta MA char chela yang chi kam do ta lopchon MA che char ina ta Nepal da sam da na ta leka ra ki ko ka pheta do ta leka ra na leka ta ngarang ki sem da simbe ki ta leka shi chiam do ta di chena ta di MA chi lopchon chena yang chi kim ta di lopchon de de la kan da tolop shi che ko do man ta sam no mo shi de ta MA ki kan la lopchon che de PhD ma to men do Nepal na na hina an Nepal da nga Tribhuvan lopchon che de ta lopchon daptan ta lopchon che ta de ngara che ta sem ki kumas dine ta lopchon che ko chana ta Nepal na lo da lopchon che na ta ngarang do na pena didik samale di chene nga kan tu chikel bola lopchon che ko yo tene ta nga ki de ta nga go so Google search ra an Google ne ne laptop mang bushi ki mean typing ta subject ta kang lopchon che ko ta chi tang chi so ri pa na to mang yo ta chi so ri pa na ya mang bo yo ani social sciences sociology anthropology geography ta pe mo bo yo environmental studies pe mo bo yo da chi so ri pa na ta pe chi mang che da chi pa ro ina ta the discipline chigla yan jotang ka ga chira andi da nga ki himjuk mo bo sha ta lopchon ka wa chena ya ka ina ta ngarang ki himjuk che ta nga che tang himjuk che de koryuk dan jewe koryuk dan ta miki jewe ani si dan jewe ki korla himjuk chi de yobe kabla ta nga ki mo bo shi pa chu ta de ta micho sang kam ri wala human geography de ta ya hyo do chena ta nga ki yang lopcha ta lopcha mo bo shi ari 당 사적인 발로 어떤 거 보시고 그걸 제도 아니 디잖아요. 결정은 기 롭자 롭자 주라 애플레이션 right joint master 양원의 joint master PhD 양원의 PhD 다 롭자 주라 애플레이션 답변을 가보요. 롭자 애플레이션 교육행 나 이게 당 거로 당연히 이게 직당한 특히 말 이게 대한 강조 먼저 이게 당한 특히 말 이게 대다 믹서기 이게지 그러나 소속이 좀담 살로 시작 그 버체 아니 소속이 힘죽 김미귤다 힘죽 기 디와디 가르제 안데 디와디 가르치는 가르쳐 버려 다 돌보치고 기코르라 나롭촌 지게는 되게 막 수시 야치요 또 돌보는 사제 총주요 미동 주스 이게 데라 아주 롭다 첨부지 당하다 롭다 첨부지는 미동 섬주 그디전에 다 돌보기 걸 롭주 김주 집어 지게는 다 미게 망치게 야치고 뭐 대신에 다 그게 디와디 빼야 보시고 그런 게 좀 야보소 아마 디콜라 디게 그나 디콜라 롭촌치는 디콜라 ngaki ta yonten sawa shik soto kir dana ni konsolati ikama boshitigo ta lopta chu da apply chu keken chu mare ki da lopta chu da keken sumi ki da igati andi ta tuche pe yonu bo koreche ani keken mangchegi leni pe apochege rata ngaki ran chepchu yo khaki ta lenkon chege mo andi le matena ta cha ta just jo matina yak ani the len tegen 디소냠도 자와야 보체 안 롭터 추레 플라첸 롭터 추레 플라체티 다 참마기 다 롭터 니게 엑셉션 김바 롭터 케케 엑셉션 봐 학교 lebna tikido ina tatila ya nega ma ko doctor khaki kyolata azu pajur ki ram chamachi na full scholarship ra mangchi ta doctor kya da doctor trugdo ki full scholarship ina da doctor ni ki ata kyolebna tikiri ina azu pajur ki ram che to samad and that of course kalchi kyode azu scholarship full scholarship na azu doctor chi to yoma ari wa ta pena logic ki tarpene fees thinking about some company ari ke dollar tong rak chu last ta di do nga chu ki teto ke niwa yomar di chene inji minji full scholarship di chene ta full scholarship ta mangbo shira yang lopta mangbo shi te ta di kawa jogo yang tam koro andi dam di ta lopta di kari ya ka do kari to do kari ma do ta ranking dam di ta na shoyo ma ta thol ta di susuki keken kawa ya ko keken di ki 다 돌보이나다 다 네팔이나다 양 페이나다 디코르다 콘수기 단다포트 힘주 컨디션도 아 콘수기 함도 그 대화 컨디 용사래 콘수기 그더라람 단디가 수치사네 안 디디스 삼 야보시 삼나탄 아니 안 디체네 탁슈네 롭다라 유에트 안 다디 도탄디 당한 믹셀기 단다포트 응아기 좀디 휴거 콘센디 다 키랑 그지 진짜 중요한 탄살 다 다디네 다 둘람 살고시 맨 다가 가르치 거요 다 양만의 배샤만 보시고 봐 딱기 도송 배샤만 양만의 배샤면 아치다 민도 나네데 삼로디 삼로디 코르코 마제 가르라나 다 그시 계랑 롭중 야포치 계랑 준주 야포치 계랑기 내가 야고 쳐봐이나 롭중 기체도 강강 못 쳐봐이나 돌람페 먹고 믹셀도 계란다 단다다 당하면 아요도 당할래 더 롭중 지간당 건축기가다 데 로람당 결결다 롭소 그냥 기타 요만 다 진행한 당 가리나 수수기 짜나 쪼거라 근데 다 계속 파 그치티 수 그치티로 아니 다 롭다 스콜러십 담이다 요 그냥 롭중 건축 야고 쳐도면 다 아리도시나다 다 사체 힘바 지켜야나다야 네팔 나니나다 사체
미래 스타트 지거래
롭중 제시도 디오말 그래서 타스 요말 안디션에 강도도 수소 롭중 제 미현다 디와티 더 탑히 먹고 싶어요 디션에 더 계속 계란 롭중 제거 등기여로 이나 더 탑히 기라면 미염도 계속 디와티 수 디와티 아니 더 돌람도 돌람 먹고 싶어요 다 finally 디 타마딘 어떤 그시 다 다든다 돌보기 현재 망보시도 디 낭네 당아 마음pad에 지켜야 될 옵션 쪽에 기 삼로도 요 땡기는 당아 디 도트슈엔 어디 전에 단단한 그시 다틱션이 해버려 다 nga samjada di 다 스텝 고림도 숨도 고림 당보디 다틱치고 다틱디 타로 마부시도 다 단단해 페나 키랑 진짜 개파이나 진짜 고와 주와이나 다틱 고츠나 티크 진짜 나와이나 다틱 고츠나 티크 다 다틱디 간데는 당보 키랑 다 롭달라 디 지켜도 롭다 야고 롭종 야고 치고이나 당보 키랑다 그레이드 야고 그레이드
아직 지금도
니와 community service
notification 레이드다
지속이 내가 먹고 야고 치고 awesome 아니 숨바루 더 creative work는 특히나 artist이나 art 내가 야고치 writer you know that 좀더 야고치 아니 디나힌 좀더 티 다디 지속이 나라 다 롭타키 나라 롭좀 치고 멤버체 김바 extracurricular activities 너도 디 야고치 좀 단단해 빼나 그냥 좀빼 야고치 티로 야나 냥아 빼 야고치 티 다 강투도 인지를 지도는 야고 그러나 인지 다 부익 백컬신 보죠. 나이키 삼절다. 다 부익이 나한테 수수기 개단지 흉 안디냠도 다 연된당 팽연 빼면 보기. 이나 다 좀 지도라 제베 갑나 부익 지보기 되게 말해. 인지 토라 야부치고. 대신 인지 토라 좀당 디도 망부치. 아니 지소나로 남지 답변나 다다 키나바츠다 돌보치도 돌보바. 디도로라면 that data community service leadership 나마다고. 안케족이 뜻은 지속으로는 제기 고도 수위로 디도 내가 뭐 붙이고 아니 숨바데 테크니컬 technical SAT la exception the SAT exit tangor kasi kira undergraduate jinda bachelor BA lopchunche doko yana ani the exit tangne the exit la point yapu keto bayana kira la scholarship aiki tang lopta yapula go ki kokap mangache ani to injiki exit TOEFL yamana ta UK tang Europe da doko chana IELTS na such IELTS kada TOEFL ta IELTS exit pe yapu tangor the teacher to take inchi pe yapo right ta kada step 1 kiran tatik di tanda chena di kasi kiran ta donde da yona donde mena ta ti leka de suche ba na so da pento na lopchon yapo che ro lopchon da exetan di so da lopchon yapo ta samsam yang mi ka he inche lopcha la exe grade yapo yomar lopchon chena perna maybe the fail mena ta marks pe new yone dikyo mari ta dong kyo dot bu kasi que community service leadership shamba creative work rather mi changwa lobjo excel ya poche to mara dichene kasi kira excel ya poche matubne sache shamba la ya poche to na digyen pe pento yes an niwa da dit changwa tati ya ko yone ta apply che wa ta kina zinda chuni turn sa wena da zinda chuni turn sa ne logic ni tati ya poche ani application che the application cherry test la order to do the undergraduate bachelor the total application kaga yore master the PhD kaga yore akada did samala undergraduate in unique that personal college essay that kira SHT go the titang de kanju manje ta kira lopta kitanda nala essay titang tina dikuma the essay the mix of the personal it has to be your story kirangi story right kirangi kawane yoin kirangi drum karire kirangi da samjar kare kirangi migul kande ro an migul ki de chetang de kande ta nga di chende dok chipola na jigme karishen tanda pardo dik bena kyo doctor chi chende na tanda pardo kyo tati karishe ro ani kyo condition ha kosun di pesaldo tik ani wadi recommendation letter ta kege mangboshi tanda pardo kira sama 망치 럽주 인기들 럽주 인도 개겐 망보식라 데벨롭 하고 싶어 럽주 하고 싶어 개겐님도 개겐데 백까지 그래 다 특히가 당보는 휴고 되지는 나 잡아치기 당강 알아야 다다 럽주로 아니 디션에 나 럽주 기콜을 개체시기래 당보디 개겐 sama 백을 좀 다 단다가 말한다고 있는 미천한테 개겐 빼면 볼래 공수기가 단다 같이 hier 같이 하고 sama 개겐기 전에 다 hier보다 하고 디겐스트 디천에 다 개겐님도 저배 하고 해 아니 개겐 공수기 디 제마키나 apply 치디 이게 디 빼야 버티도 그러 다 나기 삼절라 네팔라 개겐 망치기 디 recommendation letter 디 약고 시티도 디행이면 다 지게도 이나다 미추기 recommendation letter chik tirochina chikwa tigro that same kirangi essay de kirangi drum chembaro personal tigoena kekengi recommendation letter yang personal tigore tapena ta tundul torchi chikor tigoena koki mixel koki chido design chin tigore that's love to chula de ngamane tigoyo ngama korone de recommendation tigo digma the digena kirangi application la kyunja no mado pentoma dichene display ya put tigo finally that can application jet sawatang and love to kill offer tigo kaki funding tigo kaki kiran accept tigo kaki decline kaki funding ya damage 50% 80% 90% 100% and kaki 100% kala tatong the tigo takanda Arila kiran lopchon yapo yana application yapo chititna full scholarship right go up almost 100%. Dichane kiran ti kasi tati yapo che ani the exit is that sama yapo che you just have to tick all the boxes right box sama yapo che dangai ki labana ki that data saba ki ba that did tortushana disola yapo che tna ani chetan konsugi roram the scholarship like kokam the lot of money for full scholarship to get and that's what I did some to sell and the chair and they call like chema like a delete and to check here yeah ta kasi ta tanda get dru hyje mambushto kasi kina lobchon chilo lobchon chide ye yamana Nepal na lobchon chinde inanda dikor de tiwado thing yang lobsodo de na nganyam ngada yigeti Facebook na tina tigere yang email chena kyumido yang ke phone na ga chikena kyumido nga kantutu nga kitona oram cheki cheko nine ya ta dirain tanen tiwaini
아주
oi
Question chik tine tiang the time this those are to tiang shema the shuma reconnect chiku esare.
oh ya tanda tiwashik dirjuro yan chema
Jivashi ti ani this shugla.
oh ya
just like that.
just the sudo
The not the dean with the Jala looking to Shimbangla. Zinajini turns us in Yaglani social worker to share the Bamigu and Nikrata di Boyugi any Tolobrana Chor or something. Ani the Boyug Tolop Kariak or Digal this sooner than Angla.
ta pechir dikor la ngale yaga hyang kong hye ba yu ji ba ta ina ngai ke samjer la social work the subject this trendy mi mangche de chiga ngamanga MH de Tribhuvan University la mi mangche ge bachelor in social work chekya ani ta lopta mangche la tolop the lopta college mangche la the social work the yourself a bachelor ina nga cover dilaro Saint Xavier de Tesiapa do tenso ani kran ya nga social work la ngale de lochuche manyo ina ta mi hemba de so utility picture ngale le ya ka tetume
Anyone? One.
Hello. Hello.
Guido. We can hear you.
Toma danga pegetan shenro. Ane Toma kela translation. Tanda kaso lopuchi jotang sa rati jwa di mixe social worker chi resha di ngato tanda ngaran chongmin ba kasa kamachadu phone kamachadu dusini social worker nangore kan phone kapi dwachina ye shenro. Ane nga jwa di khari shubana ane ngaran min tundu dorche tanda ngaran chota Dolpopa For Dolpo chida lea chida chishimbayi shui chongmal sandi test le ani tadanda kapsuba kya like karshu su shubana tanda ngaran cho tanda monastic education tang tani nga school education ni chiksung re studies in chiksung ra chi gore su sura ta ina ngaran cho Nepal ka nga chikare na monastic education tang and school education thong no chasha government thong chasha school education is more given priority ani nga choi di kasa priority the school education chidan monastic education ko se de na tangan so ta di monastic education mixation kyani ana Himalaya di chibu yin sang ani di thola ni mixegi ani ke jang mayo chenchine tene dusni ta di thola nga choi ten chiktung ba ani so tu biresra ma ta na chidung so ga de pe message ko do jo tangbo di ani 지원이 아니 계라이 두스는 파 계라이 CV는 계라이 하는 아니 로규 도티스도 하고서 아니 믹스 예차 컴퓨터라 안디도라 아니 냠심난 거 요송샤 단내 값은 나타나서 예차 컴퓨터 가능서 아니 돌보 미르셔 팀모 마인딩 가능서 있다 연공 차디고 와 아니 다 팀모 마인 연공 팀모 마인비 연공 차요 값이라 다 단내 값은 아니 예차 컴퓨터 레드 리스는 룩자 다 마음바 테디 레드 리스는 에너지 룩차는 가능하다 다 연구디 다 마요
티차데 식신이 감마식 코디 카죠
튜어예
그 감마식 코디 베트가 나가 담보디 튜와디 랜드 차버체 엔디네 큐네 디그레
레소
야 오야 딱 가능한 쉬어야 the setup the career lesson the caste system lot that setup the structural problem this structure na team down policy hyungki dang ki kangal imbe chane dang chik team down the right illegal the team down galoch soya this society Nepal nang caste illegal 1962 so and then sungina the structural problem the social problem a cultural problem means 당아주기 sample betting supposed be kid 아니 cultural problem social problem like we can send 당아주 social gathering that changes to in social events rituals 가르치게 감나 that the culture puchro 아니 the digital 당에서 내가 culture 이게 럽정 통로 안 럽다디 소이나다 아니 아주 럽죽다 따뜻하나 아리도 있나 Black Lives Matter 와 디코다 드롤링 망보시 중대요 디페컬 춤벌 와 아주 드롤링 같이 내가 쓰기 아주기 그래서 럽정 펠도에 안디네 럽정 펠도는 아니 치소 야도도에 다디 가지가 말한기다 삼철라다 탑히 야휴디랑 럽정 기도네 탑히 동에 아니 드롤링 체크에 디컬 춤벌다 돌부치 소나는 거는 the drawing chig marchi kacha chig mar ani ta kacha da higirina kacha sama dilare karsa public drawing yo mar draw and this which means we all subscribe to it we are complicit in the structure and this ta maung ba kin get somebody decode the drawing ya pochi ata ani decode open the conversation draw there is no such thing as caste. It's just constructed, made up, right? And it's nothing essentially caste. I think also nangba impression. Sometimes at the end, we all are constructed. We all are, we all become in interdependence, which is to say that there is no essential us, except perhaps our our essence is interdependence. So because of something that the essential yomar right this some so you're team that team ani mikahi the pentoid wang kure mixado ta kiki something zumba kawadone ro wang su kurudo ta rigina da ta arido mikarbo ki ro konzo restaurant to ro ani Nepal ro Brahmin 토와라 가스 시스템 아마도 돌보는 바는 달비는 다 릭토와 나는데 왕규요 릭마 저도 컨트롤이 없지단 디탕규 디chen 왕규레기 디 차긴치래 디라휴엔 다디 디 원내치는 요말 this 디chen 디 고탑디 럽총당 아니 팀당 policy 기도는 마도 히바 개방아 다다 히압습니다 야 다힌 이힌 디바시스
So sorry for the interruption, so this would be our last question from audience.
Okay. Am I clear to you? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, you can hear you.
Ngaramila tinsi shugesa. Ani ngara tanda kyala and as a marigold student in Iraqla. Alurang tanda ani zindajungi pass out chane tadani lockdown tanda date you on it tangoma nang to college than to some do so into chibura ni lockdown king gate and then on to das date you ani gela my tour in do the to share you thank you very much and the location shit to the madu people around the loop around it and some city picking where TCV to the location to another to then December the kissing Andule people Korongi each other did the top of the 10 minutes until the Momba financial support in the patient at the Pebiki.
Ke comment ke comment ka.
Di ni mau ba ngarang tu ta nga thada this the financial support right chido ni ta mi kemba da din zula dewa ro chi ni kela gyune ni thapshi do ta nga tu kya ambition ni kya college de shu che chido ni Himalayan pu ro chi ni scholarship da financial support kan is right wo di thwa thang bo cha sa ten thonyo di kar she la na nga zo di ta nga zo ngala si passion da ani professional do chi ni ro ya mi changma su la da zo nga ji di khala nga subject ba chana nga zo medical ga phap ko ya ina zo nga ji passion di khandi ro in la na photography da ani computer programming do indi ro ya then dinner is samba nga zo passion da professional ni ja chi do ani dinner do thap khandi ro ya na do slay
yeah ta the chetang ta scholarship thing the corda nga ta then salus ni hyoto me ina nga nyam de chel te wachi tene kyochen kang de doctor chin de the corda ta nga ta chama ko ta tam je google de sang nga kyo kan ta google ya ko chiro just google lopta kare ta di kan lopta kare de lopta scholarship website yo ani website la do na konjo chama sawo hige undergraduate in application kan de share ko ani scholarship kare ta di pe this kala couple for ta scholarship full time ina ta tapye chewti ta kyo ma da kanto to kiran ki tone tapye che de chana ya boy ani 말씀 배치 기능하던 지역만 되었잖아. 나중에 디 님도 카퍼드 같이 해나 야고 요리 되거든. 지원이와 다 네팔의 자가적인 몇만의 토업주도 몇만의 고시학교도 그러나 science stream, management and humanities and arts. 다디디 hierarchy로 보시면 science 학교 아니 management and humanities and arts. 다디 직전에다 education system 기 노출되고 있어요. 네팔 나라도 다디 science and management 직야가던 직도고 요거. 나산저다. 나가만 science 독주시엔 다다 social science 다디 소수도 라라고 소수기 interest 나 디다 라라고 아니 디체는 소수기 passion 그지 그냥 passion이나 라다 디 독종냠도 모티네 냠도 키토나 야효리 제마도네 디참 하셔 버리 디 kirangi passion di cheto paina te mau basu su pento perna ta de adiro na kiran bachelor do tu bachelor do ki tangbane science math do yo mo te ki jita kawa kina dige ta lopa university na mo photography jinda kina degree ro ki sociology jinda kina degree yang engineering ro yang medical anatomy physiology so kari jinda kina degree ta didawshina test dela ro 다이나 다 맞죠 자가르타 네팔기 도당데 데스카가 지임베 갑라 아니 다 메디컬 옵션 믹스 딱 도당 망보시도 당마랑 믹스 기타 하콤 메디컬 거 이나다 doctor MBBS 치고 말했다 public health or nurse 다 담이다 쉬어데 디컬다 옵션치도 다 photography 당 art 도이나 passion 페이퍼 디 가리냠도 그냥 채는 되게 당아도 있는 다 힘죽식 리서치나 photography 가의 passion 디치네 나 가티나 파르자 담파 파르자 바시나 analyze 야 담파타에 백하게 디치네 다냠도 계데 다 강투도 럽정 거랑다 요나 약효리 내내 다 그냥 참 맞잖아 passion 디치 참 맞잖아 럽정 체크를 된거도 야 대체가 제망할 때와치
So this is for today. So these sessions will be concluded by Lakpa Tsiring. So Lakpa Tsiring, you may start now.
다시 들려 kuidwe
아콘도
hola so ani kena la test le mixiki tene marang ji Lero Dolpopa For Dolpo la Misiki, thank you to share you can around the complete check is the session the complete check go up to chair. Ani Misiki the name Kelala Kerangi to Jutem Batila, Ani Misiki to shooting. Ani Kelagi Kerangi Tangaranjola, Misiki, the Rangi Yamung Tonere, Rangi research tonere, Tap Hangaranjo, Dolpochola Misiki, for Chilchitong Kutya Tukune, Aranjola Pa, the monastic education Aranjo Pa, Tolpumi bird or so that Pigimi Chule, so that Lopchong to Tarsol Tangara, Mixiki spiritual teachers in the chair, and Kelaki Peshapati to top Singi Badaudan. Then a Tijela, Nepal Shungi around the Tolpo, Nepal Shungi Nala, Yakuchin 2 years to 1916, Bagdunga, Lopta Gutueta, and around the Patarabla 1963, National Yangu Lopta. Around the Kelai, the Banda Bahadur, Tapai, Korangi, looked at the Mixiki. And around the local meetings, current Nepali writing, Nepali speaking language to in Shev Korangi, the purpose it in Shado. Then a chill around the second initiation, and good journey, 1930 looked at the Yakuza Mutimera. Then in 1975, Latin King Brendraki, and it was a Togo district, 1975 Lana. 2032 becomes somebody that low ship to Shawang and looked at go to the go to any current Tabakian, taking around the research scholar, having a look on top song, anything around the history thing, but yet, the Tandaki Netan, the government, Mixiki, NGO, support share with Sure, the conclusion, the highlight the I Korangi Yaming breaking into higher education, the Korangi Mrs. Sawo shoes on Varandara, vibration the Easter, Tesota, and the Pemisiki to Jishin. Then a young Korangi Chini Chani and Korangi Yamyong Tola Parangana, Karen, Lobjong Tombo Handunia, Korangi Nekaton, and Lobjong Tibo, but some kitchen paper for Lagaranja Pemisiki Sawo shoes on Nikonamixiki Jiso repay. Chiso Ripa, the human geography Mexico Korangi topic, the Tagarang Tola Korangi Sanjumabut, now so the social science redo. Ani Tani Tatan de la Korangi and Gyung Arasola, Dolpopa For Dolpo Chitu, Maranto Google la website Sonera, Ani Maranto scholarship Karikari Rakidu, Anti Korangi Maranto Padela and Dolpopa For Dolpo la collaborate Chene. Around the website scholarship to Swan in Tapan to the Ching around the Tela Yamdo Lekupeki, Revashu Chimbo Yu. That's any Marantola ni Kempu Tandu Aranzo de la Connect Chingindi, Java Chingidi, Kamatsurin in Kamatsurin Kong Japan, the mix de la Samara Sinja and said Nitapan to teach Shuju. Ani Tatagara in Bache, any Kinaba Tadang Aranzola Tatu and me. Pigeon issue chapters do any kinaba Laranzo Kiarne, 29 July, Sami Nanika, Laranzo Miss Pemadoma, Nursery, and Kongi, Laranzo Zoom live stream you, Kinaba Kiarne, Pero now. Tujana, thank you, Gela. Good night. Good morning to some of you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.